Well, let me put that. I'm currently in the housing center on my reservation instead of at home in my trailer. Okay. I am going. You can.
Because I can see it through my camera, so that's how I see that you're okay.
That's good.
I know you guys are good, so I'm gonna close it again.
Okay. Oh, that was fun. That was an accidental cameo from Reservation Worker at the beginning of the recording. That's Maria. She's amazing. Okay, am I still good, not glitching?
You're still okay.
Oh, the internet gods are playing nice. All right, I'm going to put the music on. 3. And I will talk while I am singing. Hello, Miaohua. This is Wiwicham, Nanwikdam, Paishukdam, Penyangwa, the 4 horsewomen of truth-telling, and we are excited to bring our second episode to you. And enjoy. All right. This is a very exciting podcast episode. I am extremely thrilled to bring you guys our second official academic podcast. And we are going to be answering some questions our professor so kindly wrote for us, which is very exciting. We have beautiful new art that you guys get to see that our beloved art director was able to continue working on, which is a new title. About to put some more music on in the background from our little sponsor, my little sister. Ooh! Let me put that on in the background and turn Flavia back down a little bit. Ooh. There we go. All right. Can we see me? Am I glitching? Great. I can see myself moving. Awesome. I'm so thrilled that we are able to meet again and bring you a fantastic second installment. Enough of the introductory bullshit of me fiddling around and trying to get music going. Let us start this amazing podcast. We have a brand new section for you. We have titles for our beloved members of this podcast. I am Catherine Luane Huber, Miaohua Hauka. I am the Indigenous consultant for our podcast. Alicia?
Well, I wasn't, sorry, I didn't know whether we were going to go straight down and back up.
You're good. I said your name. You're next.
Okay. Hello, I'm Alicia. I'm currently the digital art director. I promise I will get this finished by the next podcast. I've been pretty busy. But
we love the progression. We love seeing the progression.
I would like to switch it over to Alyssa.
Yeah, my name's Alyssa. I am the now environmental investigator of this group. Shalia.
Hi, Badev. I'm Shelia. I am the psychological impact evaluator of the group.
We love it. All right. So our first question that we're going to be discussing is each of these week's readings and videos covers aspects of one or more of the topics of ecology, story, and the responsibility or place of humankind in the world, the broader web of life, and within the life cycle. How did these 3 topics connect across the readings and videos? Who would like to start us off?
I can do so.
Hell yeah. Yeah, you are an iconic starter. So I'm almost about to make you permanent starter.
Awesome. So All of the readings in the videos cover what the word story means to, and we're intending story just as like a heads up, story with a capital S in this podcast. So all of the readings and the videos cover what the word story means to each of the people who are in the TED Talks or even the authors themselves, and especially how it pertains to the land, and how we live on it and how we utilize it. So all of the topics discuss the importance of the stories, how the indigenous people utilize their stories to respect and honor the land while simultaneously utilizing it for farming and other aspects as well. And I think it's really important to point out the fact that all of these stories are passed down from generation to generation. They're words of wisdom. They're ones that the indigenous people utilize whenever they need something to rely on based off of a situation. They're not fictional. They are
Mm-hmm.
history that we're going to go ahead and cover a sneak preview in the other two questions, but they are utilized essentially as a keyword and like a framework of how to live life according to the generations prior and what has been taught to them.
Absolutely. I'd like to move in with a specific example of what I found in the first topic. As somebody who is an admirer of Lila June, she's a brilliant woman. She's a brilliant artist. She's so talented. And in our bonus podcast, I'm going to make y'all listen to one of her songs. Um, Let me get my little reference up for myself of how I answered these questions. So I gotta disagree with Lila June a little bit. I do kind of think that the Earth would be better off without humans in the form we are. Humans currently are kind of parasitical, but Lila June talks about a life and a reality where we could be more than that. She talks about her Navajo traditions and other cultural traditions, more importantly, specifically, story in the land. The specific story in the land that I wanted to bring up from her that helps connect to other ones is in the water. And I think they said on the East Coast, where the water in the lake, the sediment of the pollen and the ash would go down. And for around 3,000 years, they could tell that indigenous people were burning the landscape, burning the low grass, making sure that the trees would be burnt to protect the land. When pilgrims showed up, they read the land story incorrectly. The pilgrims called it an Edenic wilderness. It was not an Edenic wilderness. It was a land carefully taken and stewarded and consistently, traditionally retelling the story of caretaking. Moving into Leduc, she brought up the connection to wild rice, and that as long as there is wild rice, their people shall exist. That is a story. And another story she brings up ecologically is prophecy, this prophecy of choices we make, the choice between the easy and lush path or the hard and burning path. That right there, this prophecy that Western ideology would call not a story or not real, is story with a capital S. In the actual text that we read about triballography, we found out that story is power, story is people, story is everything. And I think these texts all interconnect with this reality that story is life. The land is story, people are story, everything is story with a capital S.
Can I just add on what Catherine and Celia beautifully said? I would like to go on to the part of stories of past people and how it relates to ecology and the way of life. I will discuss this a little more in the how is Western ideology of our Western's idea of story different and incorrect compared to American Indians, but I'll just give you fresh. I think the main thing, especially with all three of them, was that the past is important. That it is something to learn from and to learn. Like June specifically mentions these techniques have existed within indigenous tribes for thousands of years. Yet it's discarded because it's old. This is outdated. Even though this is something that could truly benefit. And Also, Luke also mentions this. There's techniques of how her tribe revolves around the rice, as Catherine previously said. And these techniques can be still learned now, and how we could protect them from, like Luke also said, from fracking and
Mhm.
other environmentally dangerous stuff.
Fracking.
To add on to all of you guys, but also take it from what Catherine was saying, I felt inclined to agree with her that we are a parasitic species. However, as June lovingly puts it, humanity has a place in the world. And through like our natural land shaping techniques, we can actually help our environment and help our environment also help us. We stories are for each other. They are a quality of humans, of human life. And if we don't treat the environment better, we are not going to be around to continue to tell stories. We must continue to tell stories. They are what make us who we are. And through practices and teachings, we may spread stories, and those stories will let us thrive.
What an accurate form of question from our beloved environmental investigator. Clearly knows what she's saying. Don't wave me off. Don't wave me off. That was amazing. I think we answered that question pretty fucking well. Should we move on to question 2? Ooh. Did we lose Shelia?
Did we?
Oh,
Oh no, she's there.
She's back.
okay.
You're muted. Is that? Do you want to be muted? Okay.
We're just gonna keep pushing through.
Yeah.
What do each of these readings and videos have to say about the term story? How is the term story used in each one? No, not intending to roast the professor. These questions are really similar.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of overlap, but that's okay.
But I would say I'm going to try and summarize all of it and like what all of them are saying about story. I think they're all using story in a much more reverential way than any Western ideology would use story. I feel like Lila June comes in with an extremely traditional form of story. She 100% talks about tradition, how the land is cared for, this interwoven connection between people as the Anthropocene and nature, and how they work together. I think her story of the buffalo is kind of one of the perfect examples of talking about the land and how it was cared for. I would say her variant of story and the term for story is very ecoscience based and very traditional. LaDuke, I feel, is similar but slightly more contemporized in that her focus on story seems a little more like a commentation on what Western story is. Like she is using this idea of telling stories and tradition, but again, she ties it back to the land and tradition with the wild rice, with the corn, and the way that she talks about how the corn that she chooses to plant, and how her father says she doesn't want to hear. He doesn't want to. I don't know if he said like this. I don't want to hear shit about your philosophy until you can grow corn, which I think right there in and of itself is the definition of story, because corn is an indigenous story, the way that it was developed, the way that it was processed. And in the tribal document, story is everything is kind of what I translated. Story is power, story is people, story is sovereignty, story is an intricate web of life and how it interacts with each other. And I will move it on to whoever wants to go next.
I would just like to add more on based off the tribography. I'd like to also say that stories are not meant to just be rigid. They are to be changed. That's why they're an oral tradition and not written. It's because you interpret it each time the file or document specifically states that it's based off the group and the time that we're listening it in. It's not like a book where it's forever written. You could change it, and it's meant to be changed and interpreted in different ways.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. It's like how Hal was bringing up how story writing seems to have hegemony now over storytelling.
I agree.
And that goes into what you were saying, Alicia, how the storytelling is so important. And you infuse yourself into the storytelling, and that is how you connect to your community.
I just want to add into that before Shelia jumps in if she wants to. I think the most important thing that I learn from the text is how awesome it's going to be when we play Coyote and Crow, because we will be engaging with storytelling, not story writing, not anything. We will be able eventually, possibly, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, be able to actually take part in that role playing. And I feel like something that, people get bullied for it. Historical and people who go through like historical reenactments, people who even just act and take characters. I find that we undervalue the extremely important reality of improv, of storytelling in the moment. And as somebody who loves to randomly create stories and just tell them, like I used to do a game where I'd be like, give me three things, like a color, a random object, and anything else. And I can write a story right off the top of my head for you right now. And that's something that I believe is critically important. That telling story as an active, living, breathing practice is the difference between Western and Indigenous story. The difference is that when I am sitting here with you guys at this podcast and we are building this story interconnected between all of our thoughts and analyses, we are creating a living process, not killing off the words and the life in the story by documenting it down. A lot of modern authors have started to believe that to write something down is to kill its living, breathing, changing form. And I think sometimes to preserve something for the future, it might be necessary to kill the living, breathing story of it. But the reason that story with a capital S is so powerful in all of these documents is because it's living and breathing. Now, Shelia.
Thank you. I was actually hoping for this. This is the perfect segue to my thoughts as well. And it's, for me, stories are a series of events that have occurred and how the Indigenous people reacted to the event. So in a perfect example, we're talking about wild rice, we're talking about corn, how we're able to go ahead and put respect on not just those specific produce and to be able to sustain the people that utilize the produce, but also the land and how to keep it healthy for generations and generations to come. In the reading, it was mentioned that stories are historical teachings and events that have been used for thousands of years and were passed down verbally. And like Catherine said, it was all passed down verbally. None of it was documented. But unfortunately, the way Western ideology is, unless something is written down, there is no value nor merit to it, which is why even more so, a lot of, if not all, Indigenous values and teachings were discredited, not even listened to, because why would they? It wasn't documented. It can't be real. But even more so, it's like both of the TED Talks actually discussed the importance of stories pertaining to land, science, farming, all of the other great stuff that we take advantage of, and how to make sure, like I said, not only are the crops are able to grow, but respecting the land to ensure that generations to come are able to go ahead and utilize that. None of that would be possible without stories. None of that would be possible if they weren't passed down. And kind of side note, I think it's incredibly commendable and honorable that these stories have stayed the same for generations and generations of years, even though it was passed down verbally. It says a lot about how they are the truth. You don't need to alter the truth if it's the truth. And I think even more so, that's the beauty of indigenous teachings is there's nothing to be faltered, there's nothing to be changed,
Yes.
which is why there was no need to document them,
Yes.
at least on paper.
Yes. I have to build in because you just said the most amazing thing. The difference is that indigenous stories are truth. They aren't lies spun up to make a little kid scared of a boogeyman. They aren't, a tale that's fictionalized to teach a moral. They are. And that is everything. For a story to just be, no continue, to just be. Like in our community, for the Capeño people, we are very strict about retelling the story correctly. And for some tribes, if you make a mistake and tell the story wrong, you are no longer a storyteller. If you can't keep it right and tell it right and do it correctly and change it too much, you will get in trouble in the past. And that proves that story is living. Because for many Western stories, if you tell it, if the fish gets bigger every single time you tell the story, it's okay. For Indigenous people, the fish cannot get bigger every time you tell the story because that is making a new story, and that's not the point. And I love that you brought up all that you said, Shelia. Brilliant. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I think that means we can move on to question 3. Look at us.
Oh, I love question 3.
Look at us slaying the house. All right, I'll read the question again. The concept of story is central to both American Indian studies and many Native North American cultures. Yet, the Western definition of story is inaccurate, dismissive, and act as an extension of colonial oppression. Boo! What does the term story mean in the American Indian studies sense of the word? Hint: Western dictionaries will give you so many wrong answers. Go deeper in your research, how you read and view this week's materials, and in how you talk to each other. Shelia, my love, I know you want to start us off.
I do. I think if we're even able to take a look at the way the question is phrased. When it's discussing Western definition of story, the story is lowercase. When it's discussing the indigenous way of story, it is capitalized. Once again, showcasing how history is capitalized when we're discussing it, so is story.
Yep.
Stories are knowledge, and well, let me preface this. To Indigenous people and American Indians, stories are being and knowledge, flat out and foremost. They are important events, history, culture, teachings, everything that the Indigenous people use in their way of life, and the knowledge that they have in their way of life is a story. It's their story. In Western ideology, stories are seen as fictional. They are seen as something where, as Catherine pointed out, and I'm sure everybody else in the group did as well, as something you tell your children at night to help them go to sleep. Something that may or may has no merit nor value except being a source of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Stories aren't entertainment in the Indigenous sense of the word. They are teaching. Stories have been used for thousands of years by Indigenous people as a way to preserve and teach their culture to their little ones, their history, their sciences,
Absolutely.
how to farm, where to farm, the preservation of the land, of nature, of the people around them. The stories are everything that has happened and everything that has yet to come as well for the Indigenous people. And it's going to continue for thousands of years, exactly the same way as we discussed in question 2, once again, because it's passed down from generation to generation in the exact same format. All that changes are the people who are presently teaching it and the ones that have been taught it. That's the only thing that's different about it. The stories are the way of life.
Let's give a round of applause. That was amazing. That was fantastic.
Thank you. I bow.
That was honestly, we had a practice and you said your answer, but you utterly blew everything out of the water with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I try.
Who would like to go next? I'd like to
I
close
do.
on this one.
Okay, I have thoughts. I would like to build off of that. Lowercase s story in Western ideology is fiction, is make believe, as you said, Shelia. Whereas in the indigenous idea of story. Story is history. Stories, their knowledge, their depthly woven teachings, morals, important practices, culture, catharsis shared within a community. I enjoy that how it discusses how stories have the power to transform, they inspire. And she goes on to describe the story of the unification of tribes to form the Haudenosaunee, please forgive me,
Haudenosaunee.
and how that Haudenosaunee inspired the founding fathers of America to unite and form their own confederacy. The West sees stories that come from native cultures as make believe, as ignorance and backward ideas. And yet they listen, they steal, they take the knowledge from these stories and pretend that they're their own. And Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, these founding fathers, they actually did credit the Haudenosaunee in their writings about creating the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. I already forgot.
Six
I
tribes
apologize.
of ignorant savages can have a democracy.
Yeah. It often gets left out the indigenous influence on Western culture. It gets left out of textbooks. We were not taught this information, and I think that is just a crime.
I agree. Another one. Let me give a round of applause for just mentioning the Haudenosaunee. Some amazing people. Like, go, Alicia, go. You can do this.
Okay, so you guys already threw the Western idea of story in the mud, so I will just continue on what the capital S indigenous story means. And I would like to build off of what Celia and Catherine said about it being a living being, kind in a essential sense where it's alive. Like and I would like to go into deeper where if a person, everyone can describe a person differently. And that doesn't mean that that's essentially wrong. And I feel like that with a story. It's essentially not meant to be like, okay, your interpretation, wrong. Get out of here. It's supposed to be like, there is a story that's told, and it's to guide a person, every human being, and learn from it. It's something to basically not tell, but guide, assist everyone. And everyone has a story or many stories that can help other people, and there's other stories that can help a person. And I think that's what a story is. It's just a central part of life that every day that we could learn from and grow on. And it's just something that we live with. It lives with us. And it lives with everything that lives on this earth. And it's beautiful. It's something that Western ideology doesn't essentially like even give it that chance to be a part of us. It kind of just cuts it off. And it's just like, no, we only accept this type of thing. We will lecture and criticize this thing if it doesn't fit our standards. Well, indigenous stories don't do that. It doesn't like, hey, this is wrong, this is not right. No, it's just something to learn. And even in other practices of American Indian philosophy, it's more something, even their rituals, it's not, if you interpret a ritual differently, it's not told that it's wrong. Even in Pleasant's story, her Western ideology of not going to do her chore that she was meant to. She did something that would be wrong in Western ideology, but she did it anyways, and it was right. That even though she didn't do the task, she discovered something even better, and her family and her community loved it. They praised her, and they asked her to teach it to them. And that's essentially a story that it's showing. Young people or children are an essential part of this world also. And it's just an example of something to learn from. It's one of the many stories that you could learn from. Okay.
Catherine, close us off.
I'm so ready, guys. So I want to put in a little anecdote about how I grew up, which is very critical to Capital's story. So when I was young, my father would tell me stories before bed. And when I say stories, I don't mean story with a lowercase s. They were made up, they were fictional, but I didn't realize what he was teaching me until I got a lot older. So in my childhood, there was this place called Storyland. And in Storyland, I was Princess Catherine, and my stuffed rabbit was the knight Bunanan. And there was all these places I could go, people I could interact with, things that I could do. As I got older, at times I would interact with my little siblings and visit Storyland and tell them stories as we all shared the same bedroom. And when I got older and found out that I was on the autistic spectrum, I was able to create, shout out to Sherlock fans, a mind palace, a place in my own brain that I can go to and see and visualize and engage with and communicate with people. And I realized that when I got older, that Storyland was not a silly little story given to me to make me feel better and put my imagination to use. It was a teaching, a living, breathing space that I was able to access as a storyteller. That this place, Storyland, was not simply a small, fictive place for a child. It was a way of being. To be able to engage with story, to visualize, to interact with people that aren't there in my own mind was something that I was taught. And as we were kind of studying this and talking just in this conversation, it reminded me of Storyland. And I haven't thought about it in a while. And it's something I'm going to have to bring up to my dad and tell him and thank him for, because the stories were real. They were living. When I fell asleep, Bunanan, this bunny, wasn't just a stuffed animal. He would go out and adventure and engage and interact. And as I've gotten older and come to this point where I've re-indigenized myself and started to accept myself as a whole of my parts, I realized that I am a story. You are stories. As people, we are stories. And in Howe's actual text, she says that story is power, story is culture, story is people. And I feel like it is so important for us to recognize that story is everything. Story is the relationship between humanity and life. Story is the relationship between past, present, and future existing all at once. Indigenous ritual and storytelling allows us to exist outside of space and time. It allows us to look at the land, look at the people, and engage with the threads of reality. It's science, it's art, it is everything. Story allows for Indigenous people to exist, not just as people, but as part of the land, as part of a greater whole. Unlike Western ideology, where people are gifted a land to destroy and go to some heaven where they no longer have to worry about the mortal coil, we are an integral part of the landscape. We are what our ancestors were praying for and what our descendants rely on. And thus, story is living, breathing, powerful, and in all forms, capital story is. It is. That is flat off. It is. Story is real. Story is not fake. It's not fiction. It is an exploration of existence. Even when it is an entirely little fictional story, that is real, living, breathing. Just because somebody talks about corn and is like, oh, why would you want to grow Indian corn? Why do you want to grow pink corn? As Leduc so funnily said when she was talking about growing corn, she's growing pink corn because she likes the color pink. Grow your own blue corn. She grows eagle corn because it's beautiful and it's exciting. She grows her traditional corn because her philosophy is meaningless if she doesn't know how to grow corn and listen to the corn and read its story in every kernel. And that story is 8,000 varieties or more. It is science. Teosinte was a grass that became what we know today as corn. And that right there, that proof of the corn that Leduc brings up is story. The fact that Monsanto, boo, fuck Monsanto, that Monsanto's corn failed. It fell over. It fucking did not survive a windstorm. But her corn, short, she thought it wasn't working well. No, it was prepared for how to grow and survive. And what she had, a handful of seeds, is now a field. That is a story. A story is a handful of seeds that becomes a field of dreams. That's where I'll end it. Thank you. Thank you. I think we should talk about some of the stories that were actually told to us just as an addition. I really want to know what you guys thought about when you heard that the plains at the buffalo, like, we weren't chasing the buffalo were following us. What did you guys think when you found that out?
I loved that. I think it was so cool the fact that we could shape our land, the natives shaped their land, planted grasslands, and accentuated the natural beauty and needs of the wildlife around them so that the buffalo would follow them and so that they had this symbiotic relationship of life and yes, death for eating food, but there's that connection, that deep rooted
Mhm.
connection between each other and between the land. I thought it was so cool.
Alyssa, I love how you brought up symbiotic relationships because that's literally what was going through my head the entire time. And keep in mind, these are wild animals. They have no domestication at all. They have next to no concept of what a human is. They have no understanding, like, oh, we're going to do A, B, and C for them. They were simply following because they were like, okay, this is what we need.
Mhm.
And it goes with the aspect of living with the land, providing with the land, and once again, giving respect and honor to the land. The fruits of their labor, kind of intended, not intended, was the fact that this incredibly integral part of community followed them willingly.
Yep.
And I don't think there's anything more beautiful than that, than not having to chase. And it was literally something that was attracted to them as a result of the honor and the respect that was given to the land as well. So I think it was just a fantastic, fantastic story.
I would just like to quickly just add on about how the symbiotic relationships and how it's beautiful. When something like when a being, I'd like to correct myself, a being comes to, like, we mentioned the cats, like, before this was even recorded.
In our
so
practice.
I will relate it to that. So, before cats chose to live with us, they saw that we provided something.
Mm-hmm.
And in return, they provided something for us. And this is it is a relationship between nature and everything else on land, that you provide something, we will provide something back. And with humans, since we have I would say we have more power over the land than other animals. I won't say that smarter, dumber. We just have more power over the land and how it will be controlled and be in the future. So we have a higher responsibility to make sure that the land is nurtured, that it's growing, that it's not being destroyed. And if we show the land that we respect it and we care for it,
Mm-hmm.
in return, we will also get something back. But
Absolutely.
we first have to do these things, and we no longer have to take. We have to give something back, and more, at least the same amount, because we live on this earth, as we previously mentioned a bunch of times, but we live on this earth, and so we have to at least maintain it to where future generations of people will live. And it's something that isn't really thought about, especially for past generations. It's like, oh, we'll just do this and we'll think about it later. They could think about it later. But it's just getting worse, and until it gets better, it's going to continue until we can no longer live here. It might not be us, but it will probably be our children's children. It'll be a part of us. It'll be someone that was related to us, someone that's not even related to us, but we loved. Someone that's descended from someone we love.
Yep.
Or cared about. And we should at least care for them too, even though we don't know them. We will never know them in the sense that they will know us, but we could try to give them a gift.
I'm going to close it off because we are about to hit time for our beginning part. we can head right into the bonus after I give us a little break. But I want to say you perfectly brought up what the older man in Leduc's commentary said. I guess people don't want to be around for another 8,000 years. All right, let's do a short countdown so I can have a little. I'm going to wave my hands. Okay, now we can go on to the bonus. We have perfect time on that, maybe a little longer. But now, Shelia,
Celia, do you have to go?
I do have to head out.
do you want to
It is
just
saying that
go
I'm going to
audio
be.
while you're in the car and talk with us still?
I fear I may go nonverbal and
That's
just
okay.
not talk and just be focused on driving. I could attempt, but I don't know how well it's going to work. Also, since I have to run downstairs to get to my
How
place of
about-
work, I will try my best, but
Oh.
I will not be present on
That's
camera,
fine.
and I may not be present on voice.
That is okay as long as
Well,
you are
yeah.
here.
Well, we could just do the bonus episode since it's not directly due
Do you want to do it
by
on
the end of
Friday?
tomorrow. Yeah, on Friday. If we could just do
Morning?
one on Friday earlier. Yeah.
Is everybody cool with that?
Friday morning, I have work at
You said 10?
the joys and blessings of working full time. 10:30. So I would have to be out of the house by like 9:45.
I think we should record right now while we can and let Shelia drive.
Yeah.
And while she's on recording, and I think that'll be okay because she's still here as an active listening participant. Is that all right?
All right. So for those of us, I'm just gonna do my little outro in case y'all don't hear me or if I talk very minimally. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, carry these stories with a capital S with you.
You're responsible.
Honor the land, honor the people, ask questions, learn.
All right.
And I will be transitioning to a different device. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You can go, you can take the slideshow off if you'd like. You no longer need to stream that. Oh!
Bye.
Hello. Beautiful, beautiful. Achma, that's how you say it in Cupeño. Beautiful. Achma.
Before we start recording again, what was the time for the last one?
Oh, I did not stop recording. We got a little over. I have to edit because I did not record at the very, very beginning, but we are at about 28 minutes. So it's probably more like 35 minutes, which honestly, I think she'll be fine with.
Okay.
So I think we're perfect. One of the things I really wanted to just say, I have to say for our ecological consultant, when I was reading the text, I was like, ooh, I feel like Alyssa's having a field day with the videos and some of the information that was brought up about the environment.
It was great. It was so fucking fun to watch and directly connect to what they're saying.
Honestly, that
This
makes
is
me.
why I joined the class.
I was so excited for you. I literally was getting excited while watching, like a nerd. Speaking of Lila June, I want to play All Nations Rise for you. All. Play a song from a link. Okay. All Nations Rise. So I didn't know that she was like a freaking PhD. So when I heard in my doctoral research, I went, a queen? A legend? I'm going to turn it up on my side.
I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel.
Alicia, you're part of the
Get
sequel.
ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más. Ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive a pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable. Yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and Creator is sending his very best warriors. And this time, it isn't Indians versus cowboys. No, this time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side, and we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
I'm so glad I
That's
got to
pretty
share that with you guys. When I saw her name, I was like, I know what I'm doing in the bonus.
Also, I wanted to ask, y'all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Because I don't know how my car was going to affect my everything. So I'm glad you guys can hear me. But no, that was fantastic. Catherine, thank you so much for sharing.
I'm so glad I was able to share that with you guys because I find it so awesome that an Indigenous PhD, an Indigenous doctoral program, has that voice and it's like, you know what? I can be everything all at once. And honestly, that made me, I didn't even know. I knew her first as a musician. And so that's something that I feel is so cool to the idea of story because her story is not linear. She, in and of herself, Lila June, is a tribal. That's my goal. I want to be like that.
You will. Oh, there's a lot of things that I loved about that song. Um, I love that she was like, "We will rise up. You don't have to hide anymore," and yet she was emphasizing peace at the same time,
Mhm.
just wanting everyone to be better. And when she said, like, she brought up bows and arrows, but it was her words that she was
Forgiveness as
shooting,
my
her
bow
ideas.
and faith as my arrow.
Yes, forgiveness. It's such a loving song.
Mhm.
And I wish I was better. I barely know Spanish. I can only catch a few things. I heard the word race. I heard like do this for our parents, basically. Um, it was my Spanish is so bad, and my memory is even worse. But yeah, it's so cool that she incorporated that because I know so many indigenous people, like we've talked about before, have taken up
Mhm.
Spanish and their native languages have been nearly lost or lost completely.
I don't know Spanish
Felicia,
either.
I'm just saying that
I
this
just wrote.
this native who hasn't admitted their nativeness yet.
It
yeah,
just feels, I don't know. It just feels wrong to say because I don't know where the tribe is
That's the
from.
colonization talking. An Indian without a tribe is still. How do I need to get closer? An Indian without a tribe is still an Indian. But no, I wanted to share this song because it's not just a native song. It is a song for all people to rise together, all nations, all of them rise together. And that, I'm sorry, I'm dramatic, guys. If you can't tell already from the other podcast.
I just I just wanted to say how stories could be told in many different ways, and I love it. I love how it could be
yeah,
it could be sang, it could be acted out, but it's all still like that same story. Like if you for a story in like Western ideology, it's very like rigid. Like this story cannot be put into a song. This cannot be put into a song, or this song cannot be put into a book. It's something that's like I like the fluidity of it. It's something that's fun. It's supposed to, and I don't remember if I remember the name correctly. The Nana Bush, and how they talk about how the learning and
Yeah.
like story.
None of
Well,
us.
stories are related to learning, but learning is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to
yes,
be
yeah,
something that's not dreadful.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you would want to do.
100%.
If I
literally.
could add,
Yes.
I loved the song. I think it was so beautiful. I had goosebumps the entire time. But I love that part in the song where she directly mentions history is written by the winners.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea why, or actually I do, but it directly reminded me of question number 3, and it reminded me of
Yeah.
the reading that we read in regards to the question and how it said that the reason that it wasn't taken seriously and how we brought up how indigenous stories and cultures aren't taken serious because it's not written down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in itself is directly contributing to that history is only written by the winners. It's I think it's just such an important thing to point out, and especially now that we analyzed the importance of stories and talked about the importance of stories pertaining to indigenous people, and then hearing this, it just put everything in unison that once again, it's so many different things that contribute over who gets to tell their story
Mm-hmm. Speaking,
and what version there is.
I love that you brought that up. But speaking of stories that aren't written traditionally, so this is the piece of loom work that I'm wearing today. It is how many years ago was the 80s? A long ass time ago. So this is at least from the 80s, possibly from the late 70s. I'm not 100% sure. But this was made by my uncle Tommy, who passed away when he was 15 in a car accident. A sand buggy accident, like really, really tragic, horrific accident. And it caused a lot of grief in the lives of my family. And this right here is part of his story. He was extremely artistic. He did wood crafts like balsa wood planes and models. And he was the only boy in my mom's family, the oldest sibling. And it caused a lot of problems. I think it's probably why my grandpa ended up being an alcoholic. My grandma almost, dealt with suicidal thoughts. And the way she got out of it was by taking ceramics classes and doing art. And I'm wearing a sweater right now that is actually my grandmother's sweater. And the tag literally has British invasion. Like, this is a vintage jacket. And I put it on today. And it's my favorite color, green. And I came today to this podcast wearing a story of my family. And these earrings are earrings that I made myself. Ooh, can't see that very well. And all of these pieces of beads are saved from old jewelry that would have been thrown away in a landfill, were put into like bundles on eBay for bits and pieces. And I took those stories and I made part of my own story. And I really, really wanted to be able to give an example of a story that's not written. And this story right here reminds me of a very, very important story. And I get to bring up the Haudenosaunee again. Okay, I'm a Haudenosaunee fangirl. Honestly, sometimes I just wish that I could marry a Haudenosaunee woman and become Haudenosaunee because that would slay. Honestly, my gay butt would love that. But the reality is that the Haudenosaunee, they're some of the most documented, like literally the longest running democracy in the world. The Haudenosaunee calculations go back not even to the 1100s, but to theoretically the year 1000, theoretically could come back. They have been engaging, and the way that this story is written is not on paper. It's not even fully orally. It is written in a wampum belt made of shells. And I love that. Wampum is the quahog clamshell, and wampum is so, so freaking expensive. If you look them up, they're these beautiful white and purple shells. And the purple part was the equivalent of like $100. White part is like a $1 bill when they were made into beads. And I'm actually going to find a picture of the League of Peace
You're cutting out.
Hold on. Am I back? Hello? Am I good again?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
We can hear you now.
Okay. I need to not leave the tab. I'll look at it on my phone. I forgot that I have more technology. I'm sorry. But no, so wampum belts are, guys, I gotta give you a little background on why I love the Haudenosaunee. It's probably literally brainwashing because I took 3 classes with my favorite professor, Eric Tippeconic. Shout out Eric Tippeconic. I'm gonna show you some of his art too. But he always started the class with a unit on the Haudenosaunee for all of his classes. So I have heard the story of the League of Peace many times, and every single time I get so excited because it is so beautiful. And so, do you guys know what the story of how the Haudenosaunee were created?
I
Is
think
it
you
the one in
mentioned it.
the How reading? I don't know if you got that far.
Did you read the whole thing about how the great peacemaker and everything like that?
Yeah, the Grace Peacemaker
Perfect.
and then the Warrior.
100%. I love that story. I love that story so much, guys. And I'm going to send you the picture of the wampum that tells that story. If I ever get a lot of money, guys, in the future, I'm going to commission a full wampum. I can't even imagine how expensive it would be. Thousands and thousands of dollars, guys.
Manifesting it for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it because Sorry, I got excited seeing the photo. I'm such a nerd. I'm going to send it to you guys in the Discord. I have to download it. But it's called the Hiawatha belt. You go to my Discord. And when you guys see this, you have to imagine that all of these beads were made by hand, and they are tiny. Okay, I'm sending it. It's in general.
That looks so beautiful. You
Isn't
can
that
even tell like the
amazing?
minor variants in color.
Yeah.
To bead. Oh,
And that is all from the Quahog clamshell. It is deep purple on the outside with bright white. There's 4 squares, and in the center there is the tree, which is the tree of peace. Oh, and guys, I'm emotionally damaged by how awesome it is.
can I just discuss on how pictures and like how language from pictures is like so amazing, like, and like I remember seeing like the hieroglyphs, and I was like wondering why we changed from that, because it's so
Emojis.
nice to see. Like I just love when like it doesn't have to be like just plain. It just could be something whimsical, and it could be something beautiful.
100%. And I think that's something that we, as living in a Western society, we make such ugly buildings. Can I talk about that? Can I talk about how ugly, how horrible? You guys, I was about to ask if you guys don't live in the same area as me, so you guys don't see it. So I live near Escondido, and they're doing a lot of construction. And every time they finish making a building, it's gray and ugly and square. What the hell? I love how I got so close, like crackhead energy.
Yeah, I would like to say that my urban development teacher actually brought up ecological additions to cities. Like he was discussing how the Los Angeles River could be possibly changed out from concrete
Yes.
to have plants help prevent flooding. And it's proven that plants do help prevent flooding, and it could be beautiful also. And there's other cities that do that.
Literally, I just read an article about, I don't know where it's happening, but they're creating I almost literally cringe at saying this term because I thought about the scientific theory of the land bridge, the Bering Strait theory. That's not what I mean when I say land bridge. They're creating a wildlife bridge over the freeway, and they just started putting dirt down on it. And I'm like, see, is it that hard? Is it that hard to make a little freaking bridge covered with beautiful plants? No, it's not that hard.
Yeah, I think they're making one of those things of paying it. It is so important to prevent, because when animals are isolated by this road, they are forced to breed within their population, and it decreases variation, so it makes them more susceptible to disease and other disorders that might be in the gene pool. And so having that bridge is so important, not just for saving lives from like roadkill, but for the spreading of genes between populations. And so it's going to really help our native wildlife here.
And I'm just imagining.
If I could add,
Oh yeah, add, please do.
as a psych major, it's literally learned behavior. And as these animals are learning how to use this bridge and navigating it and building their patterns upon it, guess what? All the little animals who are having their even literal babies are going to go ahead and teach their children and their offspring, hey, this bridge is a safe zone. Go ahead and use it. And this is going to be a behavior that's going to be passed down from generation to generation. And it's something that all of the different animals are going to utilize, which is going to severely help and positively impact all of these different like conservation efforts, as well as these animal populations. So I love how Alyssa brought this up. But also I had to do a shameless plug of my psychology classes and talk about behavior and how it's learned.
We literally all brought up our majors. That was really cool.
As we should.
I love that.
I would like to say that I have like a example of where we live. I like to call it Ducky Park. It's actually called Apollo Park,
Ducky Park is
and
a
we
better name.
have yeah, it is a better name. It brings the children in, but anyways, it's a living proof of how when you feed them, like literally during like springtime when the other animals or other birds are coming in, they will stop by. I literally saw like an albatross, and it was like just being, it was being chilling, just in the water, and we see like
Guys, I love
what's the
albatrosses.
storks too. During their migration, we'll see them for like a short time. They'll stop by and eat the fish in the ponds or
Love that.
mini lakes. I consider them ponds.
We
I would
have
know.
Canada geese that come around a lot. I'd expect you to see some of those too. They're like the honk 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 honk.
I
And
love
they're like
geese.
brown and black heads.
Guys.
Yeah, we have the Canadian geese too, and I like them more because they just keep to themselves. The American geese, they have our American audacity. They will come up to you and ask you for food.
I love birds so much, guys. So something that makes me fear cities, because I don't live in a city, thank God. One of the reasons I can't leave the reservation, and I'll have to, if I move, I'd have to go to another reservation, is I literally cannot imagine not waking up every single day hearing 5 bajillion sparrows and blackbirds singing. Like, it's something to me that gives me a reason to wake up every single morning, like for sure. You know what I mean? It is comforting.
It's like that when I'm sleeping at my parents' house.
Yeah.
Wake up, you hear birds outside.
And the best part is like they're our ancestors, especially the sparrows in our culture. And so there's a flock of mixed sparrows and blackbirds that lives in my tree and in the abandoned yard next door. And I see them and it's this comfort of knowing, oh my God, look, that's my family. Those are my cousins. Those are my people. I love them. And those little birds will eat things and bring seeds. And right now, one of the stories that I have been engaging with the earth is the story of nettle. And I'm just calling it a story because after this conversation, it is a story. It is me interacting with the earth because I've started using fresh nettle to make tea for my cramps, my periods, everything like that. And I didn't notice it before or care about it before, and it didn't grow near my house. But now, all along my fence line, it grows in the shade of my pepper tree. And there's other plants that are growing that I'm not 100% sure what they are, but I think they might be huckleberry plants. And I look at them and I'm just like, oh my goodness, because I have paid attention and I have looked and listened and engaged with this plant. It is coming back to me. It is coming back to me every rainy season. And whenever I see them, I get this sense of euphoria, like I'm talking to them, like just looking at, I will literally look at them and just examine how tall they are just to make sure. And it makes me so thrilled whenever I see on my little walk the sparrows and the nettles and the elderflowers and the loquats that were brought here from far away. And it's like I walk in, I'm like, oh my God, look at all the medicine. Look at all of these things. Literally, I walk down the grass and I look and I see soursop and I pick it up and I start chewing on it like a cow with a flower hanging out of my mouth. And it's like, it's something that to me is this active living dance back and forth between me and the ancestors who are giving back this gift. And it's so awesome.
I would love to add on to that.
Yes.
I am an avid plant parent. I adore plants. I love greenery. I was raised on a farm, so I was constantly around different forms of trees and fruits and shrubbery. But I love my little indoor baby plants more than life itself. So I used to have a grand accumulated total of 24 plants at all times in my room.
That's awesome.
And I would notice how the more time I spent with my plants, engaging with them, listening to music with them, speaking to them, naming them, they would grow bigger and bigger and they would get better leaves and they would be healthier. And over time, I started noticing that the weather in my room, so the temperature in my room, started becoming cooler and nicer and more comfortable for me to sleep in. And then I noticed as I started bringing more plants to my house that my house started getting cooler and nicer, and everything just started happening and changing the entire temperature of my home and the comfortability that my family and I had in terms of not just breathing, but also sleeping and living in the home, simply by me getting comfortable with my plants and then treating them as
Natural
more than they
air
tend to be treated.
filter. You have,
And it was crazy to see.
Yeah.
that makes me so happy. I love that you have natural air filtration. Your plants are like, give me all that CO2 and I'm gonna give you fresh oxygen. You're gonna feed me and
They're
water
very
me.
sassy.
I will breathe for you. It's so awesome.
My plants are currently going through it, but
It's okay.
we okay. We'll bring it back.
That's so fun. Oh, by the way, I wanted to add on to the coyote and crow thing possibility in the future. I think it would be so freaking cool if we made characters based on our majors and like what we're doing, and like created these characters in mind of how we already interact with each other, because that would honestly allow us to do so much crazy shit.
I like OCs.
I love OCs.
Yes, I would want to see all the descriptions and pictures of your characters. I love seeing art of other people's characters.
Honestly, I would just end up making my character Gatsuits and Hawe. Oh, I love that I'm completely ADHDing this entire conversation in my own direction. But I have a concept that was actually based on last podcast.
No, no. On your phone. Look it up on your phone, please.
I need to turn my power saver on real fast. I'm gonna glitch out for a second. Am I back? Can you hear me? Are we okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't looking anything up. I was just trying to turn my battery saver on because I realized I didn't have it on. But we're okay. No, so I was thinking of a sci-fi fantasy concept. I love Coyote. I think about Coyote a lot. And one of the things, remember how we were talking about time and cycles? I thought of this concept, and you guys are the perfect group to kind of workshop it with. So the idea is time travel and how Coyote can time travel. And the way that I thought about this, right, was we know that indigenous people take this in the same space at the same times at different, years, doing the same rituals in the exact same way. You know what I mean? And so my brain considered the idea of time almost being like water passing through a porous rock. And some of these holes in the porous rock will collect water and it will get stuck in the rock. And if time is like that, that those spaces that are these fluid time trapped in the rock means that in certain places, the past, present, and future are happening all at once. And so my brain thought of this idea of this coyote or coyotes, like these spiritual coyotes, people that are able to, by doing rituals in the exact same place, in the exact same way, in the exact same time, travel to the past, present, and future by going into these fluid time spaces. And I haven't fully fleshed out the idea, but to me, it makes sense as a time travel mechanism to literally, instead of doing like, oh, it's science, I'm going to travel back in time, to go straight indigenous and have time travel be you sing the song at the exact same time, at the exact same point in the year. And when you are doing that, you are literally walking the same steps as the people in the future and the past. And that right there is kind of like the concept I had about Coyote and time travel. And I wanted to share it with you guys because I think you guys would have some good additions to kind of screw around with that idea.
You don't want to get into science with it?
No, do
Because
science.
I love that concept.
Do science.
Or like, I guess it would just be science fiction because it's actually science. But like singing at the exact same time like affects the particles in such a way
Like quantum
where when you
physics-y.
picture it, yeah, if you believe that what you do can affect physics just by
Mhm.
it being,
Like
then it
background
kind of makes sense.
backrooms shit, like where if you're at the exact right atomic level, like that kind of stuff.
You clip through it and
Yeah.
then you go back in time. I like that.
I want
I
to.
like the thought of water also being like the major symbol. I think that makes a lot of sense. The way it flows, the way it's sort of amorphous, fluid.
Mhm.
It's not like rigid or like even in a lot of science fiction they think of like, oh, there's a piece of paper and you're just bending it to make a wormhole and then you're poking the pencil through. That is very, very rigid.
Mhm.
And I think the idea of fabric is better, like Einstein's thoughts, but I think water is even better.
Thank you, because when I think of time, I think of, well, I guess another song that I could share, but I'm not going to share, is the Canoe song, and it's partially Amazing Grace mixed with meditation, and it's like now you're traveling down the river of life, and it's talking about life as a river, and I think of time as like almost fluid in that sense too, because we do time travel at least mentally when we are listening to our ancestors' teachings and redoing them. And I've always considered that if we're thinking of water as blood, and if our blood is connected to our ancestors in that way, then time is fluid, you know?
Yeah, we are like part of the water cycle. The water cycle is and always has been on the planet for like 4 billion years or whatever. I think it makes sense.
I think it'd be an interesting like concept to have it where they also see the other people during those times and see how the space has changed
Mm-hmm.
over that time and see that while it's time has changed it, it's still people gathering around into this space to oh, I just forgot what I was gonna say.
It's okay.
Hey y'all, I am at work, so I do have to head out.
Okay.
This is incredibly fun.
Hey,
Thank you so much.
you
Bye.
put in so much commentary. We love you. Go work. Slay the house down.
All right. Bye, 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 bye.
Hawini. Hawana. Not Hawini.
Oh,
I said a goodbye wrong in my language. It's Hawana, not Hawini. Throw myself out a window.
you're winning.
But no, like
Continue.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the ideas I had is that the coyote can't travel to the future in certain places because people stopped doing the ritual in that place. So like my brain imagines that coyote has to go break in to this corporate building and like dance on the roof. You know what I mean? And do the ritual on the roof so that they can access this future from the past. And it works, but it doesn't work. Like, so they can do it, but it's like when they show up and it's not, the same space, everybody's like, brother, go back, undo. You know what I mean? Because there's so many spaces that were like ritualistic land. The Black Hills, guys, I hate Mount Rushmore. I just thought about it and it made me literally want to throw hands. I'm emotionally damaged. Somebody else say something.
I would like to say a concept on if the land is altered where the people or something happens to the people where they're no longer able to practice, that if the coyote tries to access those areas, it would be like a very partial access or they don't really have full control.
Like a
They would
ghost?
be glitching. Yeah, like a ghost essentially, where they can't interact or because it's so separated.
Yeah, I like that. Also, I love the idea of seeing other things. My brain thought imagining, right, is at certain times. Because you know how the theory of ghosts where it's actually like time travel and it's like people from the past living in that moment, stuck in that moment or something like that? where ghosts are just us looking into the past of something in a sense? Have you guys ever heard that theory?
I've never heard of that.
Well, let me
No.
explain. So, one of the theories about ghosts that are more scientific is that it's not like, it's more dimensional quantum physicsy stuff, like an echo of the past. And so, one of the things that I actually use in my own kind of science fiction fantasy is that sometimes there are times, actually, there's a perfect example of this in the book Power by Linda Hogan, where there are dancers that are like ghosts and they are dancing, and they're actually the ancestors dancing at the time that they were dancing, leading the protagonist to what she needs to do. But they're not ghosts in the sense that these are spirits that are trapped. They are a reflection or a memory on the land itself that conjures this spirit of whatever ritual or magic or existence there was. And that's kind of one of the theories that I follow in like kind of real life, where I kind of feel like almost, to me, makes more sense because we know energy cannot be destroyed, it's only transferred and changed. And so I like the theory that some ghosts, or that ghosts at times, are just moments in time repeating in the same space with traces of energy left over.
I love that you brought that up because I have heard of this, but not explicitly like discussed. But I played this RPG. It's probably from 2000s. But one of my favorite parts is they're in an elven temple. It is the magic that they use. They themselves, their importance of this moment, this ritual.
Yeah.
Even though they're not like actually ghosts, it's like Flint. It actually shows the figures saying it, doing the ritual. And it was like one of my favorite parts where they're not actually ghosts, but they're actually just flickers of the magic that they themselves are.
That's kind of like what I'm talking about.
Oh, I would like to add that a lot of like RPGs like to equate elves to indigenous culture. It's one of the things that I feel like it needs to be discussed.
I hate it. I gotta say, I have a problem with that. I the thing that I do like that was done was the orcs are now Hispanic in D&D, and the white people were really upset about it. The Hispanic community was like, orc, abuela, weapon, chancla. And I was like, that's so cool, because instead of the orcs being another metaphor for barbarians, indigenous people, they have changed to something more, uniquely manifested in a really beautiful concept, in my opinion. But I've never heard the concept of elves being associated with indigenous people, and it genuinely makes me want to like kick things because
Oh,
like,
I'll explain the story of the
please do.
game, and you could. So I'll explain specifically elves, and you could probably right away see the connection of indigenous history and culture. So the original, I'll say the name. It's Dragon Age Origins. Pretty good game. I would say that the representation.
Are
I
the
don't know,
elves
but
super white looking?
no,
Okay.
they're depending on where they live. Okay, so let me tell you the whole story. So originally, the elves were a part of this. The Earth was, or their planet, was a magical realm. It was filled with everything living was magical. But there was people that became greedy, and the elves that wanted to take power. So they would do very bad rituals like murder, sacrificing children.
Oh, I was like,
babies.
sometimes murder is okay. Free Luigi Mangione.
So it was a story of greed. It was basically the fall of elves was greed, of where some elves were they became powerful off of bad things. And so the good side was, okay, we gotta lock them away from the magic. So they locked them away, but also they separated the magic. So the Earth or the planet was no longer the same. And then eventually humans came, and when they came, they basically conquered the elves. They destroyed most of their history. They took away their language to essentially to the point where they do not know how to speak their language. And then a war happened, rebellion. They got back. They left the human conquered lands and found a different land that was not did not have humans. But that did not work out either. Eventually humans came over there too and destroyed
As
it.
humans do.
And so they live now. Well, so there's two separate types of elves. There's the city elves that live with the humans that didn't escape, that either chose to stay after the
So city
dominance was
Indians?
taken over and yeah. So yeah, there's a lot.
Accidental
I would
Indians?
the discussion. Then there's the elves that still live off their land. They're called the Dalish. That's the original land that they came from. So they like to call themselves that.
Okay.
So
I'm not as mad
they
about this as I was before, now that you've explained. I thought you were talking
so
about
they
elves in
live off of,
general, and I was going to be like, I want to throw hands with whoever said that. This is different. This is specific elf lore. Continue.
yeah. So they live off of the Pacific parts of land. The ones that you meet are usually in the forest, but I do know that there is in the lore that they do live in different types of land, but the ones that you meet are in the forest. But they still like their culture, they still have some statues that they don't really know the full stories of. And there's still like there's only like one elder that knows most of the lore but it's still broken. They don't even know what some of the words mean anymore. What do these items mean anymore? And so they try to recover their history. But it's never fully because the humans destroyed
I
all
like
of it. Their
that. I
temples no longer
actually
have.
like that. Now that you've explained it, I think that is a good allegory for indigenous people.
Yeah, and so the forest or the Dayless elves, they vary in skin tone. The city elves tend to be lighter because I'm guessing they want to.
Yeah.
They wanted to. What's the word?
Assimilate?
Subtly say that a lot of rape that happened to a lot of indigenous people
Yep.
that stayed in colonies.
The reason why I'm so pale is because I have an Italian grandfather and a very, very white father. Like when I say white, I mean the only non-white in him is like Central Asian, and that's still pretty white. But it's at least cultural. It's very culture. I don't associate with my modern ancestors on my white side.
It's actually a core part of the city's elf story of where if you play a boy, this is what I really liked about it is if you play a boy, you're someone that's getting married to another city elf, but you have to find out what's happening. They kidnap the brides, and it's very, very there that something happens to them. And as a girl elf, if you start as a girl elf, you are taken. You hear the screams, you hear the brutality. It's very intense. That's the word.
That
And
is
I
pretty
think
indigenous.
some
That's
people
pretty
wouldn't be able to
colonized. They're
handle
pretty
it.
indigenous.
It is kind of like where it's like, damn, why it's so.
I'll give them credit for that. I love it when
And
don't.
they actually, I love the word for. I love the word. Oh, sorry.
You're good. Go.
The one thing that I love from the forest elves or the original language of it is they call humans shims, and I just love that word.
Shims.
It means child.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it means like a bratty child. That's what it means.
See, that's amazing. I love that. I love that.
Thank you for explaining.
I'm sorry for my nerdy rant on RPG.
No problem.
I just thought it connected to indigenous history, and I love the elves in there, and I think it's just intense. I think if you could handle like the actual allegories to what actually happened in history, it's a good game. You guys should check it out.
That's awesome. Alyssa, you look like you're dying and falling asleep over there.
It's speaking of what you were bringing up earlier, cramps. I am like in pain.
I think
That's why I'm not participating.
I think for your sake, we definitely have a good enough bonus episode, don't you think?
Yes, I would love if we can smoothly integrate it to continue like Alicia's line of thinking and your thinking, like including pop culture, video games, more music, more television, movie influences that native culture has given. Because I do have thoughts on it.
Okay.
I actually have a piece of art on my wall
Where?
that has a lot of native influence. It's Horizon Zero Dawn and
Nice.
Forbidden West. It's one of my favorite games. I would love to talk about it another time.
Yeah, we can. I'm so sad we don't get to do a podcast next week, guys.
Oh yeah, we're so
We should film a bonus episode where we're just talking shit about. Oh, we could actually film ourselves doing the homework together. If you guys want. If you don't want, we don't have to.
It's scheduling is getting in this last month and a half. It's getting rougher for me.
Okay, yeah, finals are heading up. It's okay. We can figure it out. We will have another podcast. And when this class is done, we'll all figure out how we can meet once a month to continue.
In the Discord, can we discuss like what were our next topic? Because he said that the third podcast could be pretty open. So if we could get some ideas out there.
Let me turn this recording off. Goodbye. We are not going to give you any previews.
Bye, recording.
Bye, friends. We're going to leave you. Let me stop.